The snow around the farmhouse told a story that Andreas Gruber could not explain. Footprints, leading from the edge of the forest, crossing the yard, arriving at the door of the machine room. No footprints leading back. He searched the machine room. He searched the farm buildings. He searched the house. He found nothing, and no one. But the tracks were there. Someone had come out of those woods and walked to his door, and whatever they had done next, they had not walked back. That was in March 1922. Andreas Gruber told his neighbors what he had found. He refused their offers of help. He did not report it to police. 5 days later, 6 people were dead. Every case has evidence, every clue has a story, and every mystery has a solution hidden somewhere in the facts. The question is, can you find it before we reveal the answer? This is the case file. Bavaria, Germany, spring 1922. The farmstead known as Hinterkaifeck sat alone in open countryside, approximately 70 kilometers north of Munich, surrounded on 3 sides by dense pine forest. It was a working farm, cattle, crops, the rhythms of rural Bavarian life. The nearest neighbors lived several hundred meters away. The nearest town was a significant journey by the standards of the time. Hinterkaifeck was, by any measure, isolated. 6 people lived there. Andreas Gruber, 63 years old, the patriarch, a man described by those who knew him as harsh and difficult, with a temper that kept his neighbors at a respectful distance. His wife, Katzilia, 72. Their daughter, Victoria Gabriel, 35, widowed, living at the farm with her 2 children, 7-year-old Katzilia and 2-year-old Josef. And the household maid. The maid is a detail that matters. In the months before the murders, the Grubers' original maid, a woman named Crescens Rieger, had left her position at Hinterkaifeck. The widely reported reason for her departure was that she had heard strange noises in the attic of the farmhouse and had become convinced the building was haunted. She left and told others what she had experienced. Her replacement was a woman named Maria Baumgartner. Maria was 44 years old. She arrived at Hinterkaifeck on the afternoon of the 31st of March, 1922. Her sister escorted her to the farm and left after a brief visit. Maria Baumgartner had been employed at Hinterkaifeck for approximately 1 day when she was murdered. The strange events had been building for weeks before that afternoon. In the months prior to the murders, Andreas Gruber had noticed a series of occurrences he could not explain. Keys to the house had gone missing, several of them, separately, over a period of time. A newspaper from Munich had appeared in the house, a paper that nobody at Hinterkaifeck subscribed to, that no neighbor delivered, that simply appeared one day on the property, as if someone had left it there. And then the footprints in the snow. Andreas found them in the days immediately before the murders. Tracks leading from the forest to the door of the farm's machine room, whose lock had broken some weeks earlier and had not been replaced. He followed them. He searched. He found nothing. But the tracks went one way only. Whatever had made them had not returned to the forest. That same night, the family heard footsteps in the attic above them. Andreas searched. He found nothing. He told his neighbors everything: the newspaper, the missing keys, the tracks, the footsteps. He refused their offers of help. He did not go to the police. Andreas Gruber was a man who dealt with his own problems. Whatever was happening at Hinterkaifeck, he would handle it himself. He did not get the chance. On the evening of the 31st of March, someone, or more than one person, lured the members of the Gruber family to the barn, one by one. Andreas, his wife Katzilia, their daughter Victoria, and 7-year-old Katzilia Gabriel. Each of them was killed in the barn with a mattock, a heavy farming tool, part axe, part pickaxe, part hoe. The murders were brutal and deliberate. Inside the farmhouse, 2-year-old Josef was killed in his cot. Maria Baumgartner, who had been at Hinterkaifeck for 1 day, was killed in her room. 6 people, one evening. A single weapon found later in the barn loft. And then something happened that investigators would find more disturbing than the murders themselves. The killer stayed. For 3 to 4 days after the murders, someone remained on the farm at Hinterkaifeck. The livestock were fed, the cattle were tended, meals were prepared in the kitchen, the stove was lit. A neighbor passing in the night reported seeing smoke from the chimney and an unidentified figure who briefly illuminated them with a lantern before retreating indoors. The neighbor thought nothing of it and continued on his way. The bodies of 4 members of the family lay in the barn. The bodies of Joseph and Maria lay inside the house, and someone moved among them, going about the ordinary routines of a working farm for several days. It was only when 7-year-old Kazelia Gabriel failed to appear at school, when the family missed Sunday church, both deeply unusual for the Grubers, that neighbors became concerned enough to investigate. On the 4th of April, 1922, a group of neighbors went to Hinterkaifeck. They found what was waiting for them. The investigation that followed was extensive and ultimately futile. The Munich police investigated over 100 suspects in the years that followed. The case was hampered from the beginning by the state of the crime scene. Neighbors had walked through it before police arrived, handling evidence, and in some accounts, even preparing food in the farmhouse kitchen while the bodies were still present. Early 20th century forensic techniques were limited. Evidence deteriorated or was lost. In 1923, the farmstead itself was demolished to prevent it becoming a site of morbid pilgrimage. During the demolition, the mattock used in the murders was found hidden in the barn loft. The victims were exhumed and reburied, without their heads, which had been removed for forensic examination, and were subsequently lost during the upheaval of the Second World War. The primary suspects investigated over the decades fell into several categories. The first and most extensively investigated was a neighbor named Lorenz Schlittenbauer. He had been in a relationship with Victoria Gabriel and was widely believed locally to be the father of young Joseph, though he disputed paternity. When Schlittenbauer was among the first neighbors to arrive at the farm on the 4th of April, investigators later noted that he had handled the bodies with a detachment that struck witnesses as unusual. He knew the farm intimately. He had clear potential motive, avoiding an ongoing financial obligation related to paternity of Joseph. He was questioned extensively. He could not be conclusively placed at the farm on the night of the murders. He denied any involvement for the rest of his life, successfully suing several people for slander when they publicly accused him. He died in 1941, with the case unsolved. The second major suspect was Karl Gabriel, Victoria's husband, officially reported killed in action in France during the First World War. His body had never been recovered. Investigators theorized that Karl might have survived the war and returned to Hinterkaifeck, known only to Victoria, who had concealed his survival, and that a confrontation had resulted in the murders. The theory explained the killer's familiarity with the farm and his apparent comfort remaining there afterward. It could not be proven. Karl Gabriel's fate was never definitively established. A third line of investigation focused on a far-right paramilitary suspect with a history of violence connected to the political upheaval of early 1920s Germany. This line also led nowhere conclusive. In 2007, 85 years after the murders, a group of students at the Fürstenfeldbruck Police Academy in Germany took the Hinterkaifeck case as a cold case study, applying modern forensic methodology and criminal profiling to the available evidence. After extensive analysis, they concluded that they had identified a prime suspect. They refused to name that suspect publicly, citing respect for the suspect's surviving descendants. The identity of the Hinterkaifeck killer, the conclusion reached by the most rigorous modern analysis of the case, remains officially undisclosed. That is the evidence as investigators had it. A farm where footprints arrived but never left. A family who heard someone in their attic and chose not to act. 6 murders with a single farming tool. A killer who stayed for days afterward, calm enough, confident enough, to tend the animals and light the stove. Over 100 suspects, a prime suspect identified in 2007 and never named. And a case that has been formally closed not because it was solved, but because everyone who could provide answers has been dead for decades. Here is the challenge. Using only the evidence presented, who killed the Gruber family at Hinterkaifeck? What does the killer's behavior before and after the murders tell you about who they were? And what single detail in this case, if you reason through it carefully, tells you the most about the identity of the person who walked out of those woods and never walked back? Pause the video now, write down your theory, drop it in the comments. When you come back, we will walk through the 3 most credible theories, what investigators now believe most likely happened, and why the 2007 Police Academy conclusion, the closest thing this case has to a solution, may never be made public. We will see you on the other side. The 3 theories that have survived serious scrutiny across a century of investigation each explain some of the evidence and fail to explain the rest. The neighbor theory, centered on Lorenz Schlittenbauer, has the most circumstantial support. His proximity to the farm, his intimate knowledge of its layout, his potential motive relating to Yosef, and his behavior at the crime scene discovery have kept him at the center of serious analysis for 100 years. The argument against him is the same as the argument for him. He was a neighbor, well known to the family, and his familiarity with the farm and his reaction at the scene could equally be explained by genuine shock or long acquaintance rather than guilt. The returning soldier theory, Carl Gabriel alive, has an elegant logic. It explains everything the neighbor theory struggles with: why the killer remained at the farm so comfortably, why the murders included every member of the household, including the new maid who would have seen his face, why no alarm was raised before the killings. A man returning to his own farm, known to his wife, unknown to police records as a living person, could have acted with exactly the unhurried calm the evidence suggests. The argument against it is the absence of any evidence that Carl Gabriel survived the war at all. The unknown outsider theory, a stranger connected to the family's history, the political upheavals of the time, or some undiscovered grievance, has never been ruled out and cannot be. The farm was isolated. Access was possible. The broken lock on the machine room door, the footprints from the forest, the weeks of apparent observation before the night of the murders. All of these suggest someone who came from outside and planned carefully. What investigators consistently return to across every serious analysis of this case is the behavior after the murders. The killer was not panicked. The killer was not fleeing. The killer stayed at Hinterkaifeck for 3 to 4 days, among the bodies, in the rooms of the people they had killed, carrying out the daily routines of the farm with enough composure that a passing neighbor noticed nothing unusual. That is not the behavior of someone committing an opportunistic crime or acting in the heat of the moment. That is the behavior of someone who felt, at some level, that they belonged there. The 2007 Police Academy analysis pointed toward that conclusion. Their suspect, whoever they were, was someone who knew Hinterkaifeck, someone for whom the farm was not a foreign place, but a familiar one. Someone who came from those woods that night, not as a stranger, but as someone returning. 6 lives, 1 farm, 100 years. No answer. The footprints led in, none led out. And the snow has long since covered everything. That is, the case file. A new case every week. Real evidence, real clues. One chance to solve it before the reveal. Subscribe, and we will see you next case.